This Hershey's can of cocoa powder, fake chocolate. This Taza Stone Ground Cacao, real chocolate. Most people think cocoa powder is just ground chocolate. It's not. What you're buying has been so aggressively defatted, alkalized, and industrialized that it can't function as food anymore. It only works when you bury it in sugar, butter, and flour. Real chocolate powder tastes like chocolate. You can drink it. You can taste it. You don't need rescue ingredients. Let me show you which cocoa powders are industrial baking dust, which ones are chocolate-flavored sugar, and which ones are actually chocolate, and why most hot chocolate mix doesn't contain real cocoa at all. Once you see the difference, you'll never look at that brown can the same way again. Hershey's Cocoa, Hershey's Special Dark, Ghirardelli Majestic Cocoa, Nestlé Toll House Cocoa. These aren't chocolate anymore. It's possible they never were. They're what's left after chocolate gets stripped for parts. It starts with the building blocks of cacao, but gets derailed quickly. Here's how it works. Cocoa beans are fermented, roasted, and ground into cocoa mass. A thick paste that's roughly 50% fat, cocoa butter, and 50% solids. Industrial cocoa powder is what happens when you press most of that fat out, aggressively. The cocoa butter gets extracted, not because it's bad, but because it's worth more than the powder. Cocoa butter gets sold to chocolate makers, cosmetics companies, and pharmaceutical manufacturers. The good stuff gets sent up the food chain. What's left behind is dry, bitter powder. And at that point, it's not thinking about flavor anymore. It's thinking about behavior. This cocoa has been defatted down to 10 to 12% fat. Real chocolate is 50% fat. That missing fat carried aroma, texture, and flavor. Without it, you're left with bitter dust that stings your tongue. And then it gets worse. Dutch processing, also called alkalization, treats this powder with an alkaline solution. This neutralizes the acidity, darkens the color, and smooths out the texture. Why? Because recipes need cocoa to behave predictably. If you're making a boxed cake mix or brownie formula that ships to 10,000 stores, you cannot have cocoa that varies by harvest, region, or season. You need cocoa that dissolves the same way, reacts the same way with baking soda, and produces the same color every single time. Flavor complexity gets sacrificed for standardization. Hershey's Special Dark tastes the same, whether you bought it in 2015 or 2025. The beans might change, the suppliers might change, but the powder doesn't. That's the entire point. When you taste Ghirardelli Majestic Cocoa or Nestlé Toll House Cocoa dry, straight from the can, it's not pleasant, it's harsh, it's flat. There's no aroma, no chocolate character, just bitterness with no payoff. That's because you're not supposed to eat it that way. You're supposed to add sugar, and butter, and eggs, and flour, and baking soda. And then it becomes brownies. Industrial cocoa isn't fake because it's dangerous. It's fake because it can't function as chocolate anymore. It's a baking ingredient, not food. At $5 per can, you're paying for powder that's been engineered to death. It works in formulas. It doesn't work in your mouth. Now let's talk about what most people actually drink when they think they're drinking cocoa. Your go-to cup of hot chocolate on a cold winter night might be Swiss Miss or Nestlé Rich Chocolate. Maybe it's Great Value or Kroger Hot Cocoa Mix because they were cheaper. These products don't exist because cocoa stopped working. They exist because sugar is cheaper than cocoa, and real cacao is even more expensive. When you strip cacao of its fat and alkalize it into cocoa powder, you create a problem. It doesn't taste good anymore. It's bitter. It's harsh. It needs help. But instead of using real cacao or better chocolate, brands did the math and realized something. Sugar costs pennies. Even cheap cocoa costs more. Real cacao costs way more. So the solution wasn't to make better chocolate. The solution was to use as little cocoa as possible, replace most of it with sugar, and just add enough cocoa powder to make it brown and call it chocolate. Look at the ingredient list on Swiss Miss. Sugar is first, then corn syrup, then modified whey, then cocoa. Cocoa isn't the main ingredient. It's not even second or third. It's a flavoring agent in a sugar delivery system. The typical packet contains roughly 24 grams of powder. Of that, maybe 2 to 3 grams is actual cocoa. The rest is sugar, corn syrup solids, and dairy fillers designed to create the illusion of richness without using real chocolate. That ratio isn't an accident, it's optimized. Add more cocoa and costs rise. Add less, and people notice it doesn't taste like chocolate anymore. So brands land on the minimum viable cocoa content, just enough to make the claim legal and the color brown. When you pour hot water over Swiss Miss, it dissolves instantly, perfectly, no clumping, no stirring required. That's not because the cocoa is high quality, it's because there's barely any cocoa in there. Sugar dissolves instantly. Corn syrup solids dissolve instantly. Modified whey dissolves instantly. The tiny amount of cocoa powder just gets carried along for the ride. Real cacao powder, the kind with fat still in it, doesn't behave this way. It clumps, it resists, it needs heat and stirring to incorporate. That's how you know it's actual ground chocolate, not engineered powder. Hot chocolate mix was designed to be foolproof. Add water, stir once, done. But that convenience came at a cost. The chocolate disappeared. Nestlé Rich Chocolate, Kroger, great value. They're all slight variations of the same formula. Sugar forward, cocoa light, engineered for consistency and cost. Some add marshmallows, some add extra creamy dairy powder, some use different stabilizers, but the core is always the same. Minimize cocoa, maximize sugar, make it dissolve fast. The taste reflects that formula. When you drink Swiss Miss or Nestlé Rich Chocolate, the dominant flavor is sweetness. There's a faint chocolate note underneath, more of a suggestion than an actual flavor. No bitterness, no complexity, no finish. It tastes like sugar that spent time near chocolate, then moved on. At $5 per box, you're paying for convenience and familiarity. These mixes work, they're consistent. Kids drink them without complaint. But they're not hot chocolate. They're chocolate-flavored sugar dissolved in hot water. And the chocolate part is negotiable. Cocoa didn't disappear from hot chocolate. It just became optional. Now we're getting to the stuff that actually tastes like chocolate. Taza Stone Ground Cacao Powder, Navitas Organics Cacao Powder, Equal Exchange Organic Baking Cocoa, and Terrasoul Superfoods Cacao Powder. These powders are made differently because they prioritize flavor over behavior. But here's what most people don't understand. This isn't the same product as Hershey's cocoa powder. Hershey's cocoa exists to go into brownie batter. It's a baking ingredient that only works when combined with sugar, butter, and flour. Real cacao powder exists to be tasted, drunk, mixed into smoothies, stirred into oatmeal, added to coffee, used in places where you want to taste actual chocolate, not chocolate flavor that only appears after baking. That's the difference. When you open a bag of Taza Stone Ground Cacao, the smell hits you immediately. It doesn't smell dusty. It doesn't smell flat. It smells like chocolate, not cocoa powder, not a baking ingredient. That's because this powder retains more of what makes chocolate taste like chocolate. It's minimally alkalized, sometimes not at all. It's processed at lower temperatures to preserve the volatile compounds that create aroma, and it keeps more fat. Not as much fat as melted chocolate. We're talking 15 to 20% fat compared to the 10 to 12% in Hershey's Cocoa or Ghirardelli Majestic. That extra fat carries flavor, aroma, and texture. Without it, you get bitter dust. With it, you get something that tastes like ground-up chocolate. Here's how you use Navitas cacao powder or Equal Exchange Organic Baking Cocoa. You stir it into warm milk with a little honey or maple syrup. Not a packet of pre-mixed sugar, just cacao, milk, and sweetener, and it tastes like drinking chocolate. Not hot chocolate mix, not chocolate-flavored sugar water, actual chocolate that you're drinking. You can also blend it into smoothies where you want real chocolate flavor without melting a chocolate bar. Mix it into yogurt. Stir it into oatmeal. Add a spoonful to your coffee for a mocha that actually tastes like chocolate. This is chocolate you can taste on its own. Not chocolate that only shows up after you've added 6 other ingredients. When you stir Taza or Navitas into liquid, it doesn't dissolve instantly like Swiss Miss. It clumps. It resists. You have to stir it properly. You have to give it heat and time to incorporate. That's not a flaw. That's proof it's real ground chocolate, not engineered powder. Industrial cocoa dissolves fast because it's been processed to behave that way. Real cacao behaves like food. It needs coaxing. It has texture. It has body. When you taste it dry, just a pinch on your tongue, it's still bitter, but it's aromatic bitter. There's fruit underneath, there's depth. There's a lingering finish that feels like you just tasted real chocolate, not cocoa-flavored dust. At $10 to $15 per bag, real cacao costs 2 to 3 times more than Hershey's cocoa. But you're paying for chocolate that hasn't been stripped of everything that makes it taste like chocolate. If you want to make brownies, buy Hershey's cocoa powder. It's designed for that. If you want to drink chocolate, taste chocolate, or add chocolate flavor to something without burying it in sugar first, this is what you buy. And then there's the cream of the crop of actual drinking chocolate. Brands like Valrhona cocoa powder, Dandelion chocolate drinking cacao, TCHO drinking chocolate, and Guittard Cocoa Rouge. These aren't just minimally processed cacao powder. These are chocolate products designed to be drunk, not baked. And the way they're made is completely different from everything we've talked about so far. Here's what separates premium drinking chocolate from industrial cocoa powder. The beans matter. Brands like Dandelion Chocolate and TCHO source single-origin cacao beans, meaning the beans come from specific farms or regions, not blended commodity beans from multiple countries. The origin affects flavor. Ecuadorian cacao tastes different from Madagascar cacao. Venezuelan cacao tastes different from Peruvian. That variation isn't eliminated. It's preserved. Hershey's cocoa powder blends beans from multiple sources to create consistency. Dandelion sources beans to create expression. The roasting is gentler. Industrial cocoa roasts beans at high temperatures to strip out acidity and create standardized flavor. Premium drinking chocolate roasts at lower temperatures, sometimes for longer periods, to develop complexity without burning off the volatile aromatics that make chocolate smell and taste like chocolate. That's why Valrhona cocoa powder smells intense when you open it. The aromatics survived, the fat stays in. Remember, industrial cocoa powder is defatted down to 10 to 12% fat because cocoa butter is worth more than cocoa powder. But here, premium drinking chocolate retains more fat, sometimes 20 to 22%, because the goal isn't profit maximization. The goal is flavor. That extra fat carries aroma. It creates body. It makes the powder coat your mouth when you drink it instead of leaving you with watery chocolate-flavored liquid. No. If the beans matter, then the grind matters. Dandelion chocolate drinking cacao and TCHO stone grind their cacao. That means the beans are ground between rotating stones, not high-speed industrial grinders. Stone grinding is slower, it generates less heat, and it creates a coarser texture. When you open a bag of Dandelion drinking cacao, the powder doesn't feel silky like Dutch processed Hershey's Special Dark Cocoa. It feels grainy, almost sandy. That's not a defect. That's proof it wasn't over-processed. The texture means the cacao particles are larger, so more surface area, which means more contact with your tongue when you drink it. That texture is part of the experience. The taste is layered. When you make drinking chocolate with Valrhona cocoa powder or Guittard Cocoa Rouge, the flavor isn't just chocolate. There's bitterness, yes, but it's balanced with natural sweetness from the cacao itself. There are fruit notes, sometimes berry, sometimes citrus, sometimes tropical, depending on the origin. There's a woody finish, not harsh, but earthy, like the flavor is rooted in something real. The flavor evolves as you drink it. It doesn't hit sweet and stop like Swiss Miss. It starts bitter, develops sweetness, finishes with depth. That's what happens when chocolate is allowed to taste like the place it came from. The price reflects the process. At $15 to $25 per container, premium drinking chocolate costs as much as a Dubai chocolate bar. That's not markup, that's reality. Single origin beans cost more than commodity blends. Gentle roasting takes more time. Stone grinding is slower than industrial milling. Retaining fat means giving up the profit from selling cocoa butter separately. You're paying for chocolate that was made to be tasted, not engineered to behave in a factory. Here's how you use it. Heat milk, not water, until it's steaming. Add 2 to 3 tablespoons of Valrhona or Dandelion drinking cacao. Whisk it aggressively until it's fully incorporated and slightly frothy. Add a small amount of honey or maple syrup if you want sweetness, but taste it first. You might not need as much as you think. What you get is thick, rich, aromatic drinking chocolate that coats your tongue and leaves a finish that lasts. This isn't a substitute for Hershey's cocoa powder in brownies. This is chocolate you sit down and drink slowly, because it's worth paying attention to. This is chocolate that doesn't need sugar to be chocolate. Most cocoa powder in American kitchens has been defatted, alkalized, and industrialized until it can't function as food anymore. It only works when buried in sugar and butter. But on the other hand, real cacao powder tastes like chocolate because it still is chocolate, minimally processed, with fat and flavor intact. If you can't drink it, it's not real chocolate. It's baking dust. Hit subscribe for more Built to Eat, where we expose what's really in your pantry. Drop a comment if you've been using Hershey's thinking it's chocolate. Keep your standards high and your cocoa actually drinkable.